All right, you're listening to Crown Car Care, and I forgot to load in the
That's
Crown
okay.
Car intro.
We all get a break. It's coming up towards Christmas, and we all get to relax. And, well, let's enjoy this radio hour that we have here, sponsored by Crown Car Care. And, oh, here we go. Here it is. Perfect.
Yeah.
We always get a little bit of a
expressed
ditty.
on this program are those of the program host and guest and are not necessarily those of this station, management, staff, and sponsors. WSTU does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU. It's time now for the Crown Car Care Show. Call in with questions and comments, 220-9788, 220-WSTU. Now, here's your host.
Well, we are live here in the Christmas studio here in
Yes.
Stuart, Florida. There's elves here diligently working, getting all the gifts together. Our little radio extravaganza or palace here is filled with stockings, Santa Clauses, sleds, and elves.
And snow scenes. Yes.
And snow scenes.
Yes.
And that is a prelude to next week.
Yeah.
Next week, we are going to have a special guest right from the Motor Town itself. Dr.
Wow.
Detroit will be here.
Dr. Detroit will be in the house.
He'll be in the house, and
Wow.
we'll be talking about how that sled flies.
Okay.
We'll get to the mechanics of it.
Nice.
And it should be a fun show. It'll be a Christmas
Yeah.
special. This week, though, we have a great show in store for everybody. We will be, as always, talking about car news. And then we will
Yes.
lead up to a little bit about Crown Car Care, what we are, and how maybe we can help you here in Martin County. And then thirdly, we'll be talking about the history of some early diesel engines that really led and paved the way for what we have today in our modern diesel engines. We'll talk about Rudolph Diesel and another gentleman by the name of Mr. Ackroyd Stewart. He's an English chap. And finally, at the end of the show, the fourth item we'll be talking about will be the check engine light.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that have a lot of questions about that. And it's still to this day can be very sketchy if you don't know. In fact, there's we have some good snippets for you
Yes.
in store.
Yes. A little fun to share.
But my name is Todd Harris, and I own Crown Car Care with my family, Tamara, Max, and Eden. And we have two wonderful locations here in Martin County to serve you. We have our original location at 3982 Southwest Bruner Terrace. We're over off right by the Turnpike entrance in Palm City. Real easy
Yeah,
to get to.
it is. It
Right
is.
off 714. We've been there for, 13, 14 years. And our phone number there is 772-781-8000. And that is a phone number that you can remember easy. It's an easy number, and we can get you to either location if you call that phone number. And our second location is over on Cove Road, which is in about a mile from US 1 East, and not quite to the inlet, but right before the railroad tracks on the left-hand side. You can't miss us. We share a building with St. Lucie Battery and Tire. They're one of our wonderful companies that we do business together with, and they sell tires and batteries there. You see Freddie. Freddie's a real good guy. He's been there for years, and Mike is my manager over there, and it's a wonderful big location. We can service not only your fleet needs with, your cab over trucks or your landscape type trucks, but we can service anything from a Toyota Camry to a Honda Accord to a Buick LeSabre, whether it be air conditioning and oil change, wiper blades, or you just need some air in your tires. Or if you're just lonely and you want to talk cars, come over and see us.
Or if your check engine light comes on.
Check engine light comes on. We have a wonderful fish tank there. We have some African cichlids. If you're big into fish, we have some beautiful purple and yellow African cichlids over there. A big 55-gallon fish tank right in the waiting room. If you want to come over and just look at the fish, come on over. If you want a cold drink, we can get you that too. If you want to look at the back and see how we work, we can do that as well. Nothing we keep hidden, and we welcome anyone that comes into our business, and we'd love to show you around, and we'd love to talk cars with you. And Mike is the manager over there.
All right. Say hi to Mike for us.
I will.
Yeah.
And Frank, why don't you lead off into some car news this week. I think we have some
Yeah.
interesting stuff going on.
Yeah, interesting things. This weekend, CBS News interviewed Elon Musk.
And Elon Musk has been a topic of our discussion for for months now. We've talked about him. We really at Crown Car Care, we think he's a cutting edge and we think he does great things. But as with everyone that's cutting edge and does great things, there's always side things about him that no one seems to like or seems to be attracted to, and they always bring attention to.
Right. And of course, these news magazines, they got, that's what they focus on.
Okay.
But they talked about, they've interviewed him 10 years ago in 2008.
Okay.
And so they just kind of interviewed him again 10 years later. And then it's interesting dynamics. One of the things they talked about was the fact that he was in with a cadre of other startup companies in 2008.
I did not know that.
And all the other companies failed.
And he has succeeded.
Right. So,
and as we've talked in the past, he always puts everything on the line.
right.
And that is a true sign of an entrepreneur or somebody that so believes in what they believe in and want to produce or bring to the world in terms of new technology. They will risk everything. And I know he's risked everything many times.
Right.
And he even flies the supplies up to our space station up there.
He does.
So he has I'm sure it's a sweetheart contract with the United States government, and I'm sure he gets paid well.
Yes, and that helps the cat keep all those wheels turning.
But I don't think there's any other outfit that's flying the stuff up there, is there? I know the Russians will do it. Yeah, but you're paying rubles to get them things up.
Blue Horizon is looking to do that too with their
Amazon.
Space. Yes,
Amazon. That would be Bezos.
Bezos, right?
Bezos, yeah,
Jeff Bezos.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And he's competing for that, and so it's a really interesting competition that's taking place on that level too.
I think looking at the two, Jeff and as well as Elon, I think Elon he's willing to risk it all, hang all toes over the edge, hang 10. He hangs all 10 toes over the edge of that surfboard all times. Right. And I have to give him credit for that because it takes a lot to be able to do that. And you catch a lot of heat from it too.
Yeah, he dives in.
He dives in.
About it.
Okay, so what else is going on out there?
Well, of course, Goshen is still in trouble, and him and Nissan were indicted for underreporting the compensation.
And he, by the way, is this ex-CEO
of Nissan.
Nissan. He used to be, prior to that, he was the CEO of Renault, which is a French, and I believe he's a Frenchman himself.
Could be.
Yeah, I believe he is French. Yeah. And he has been he's a flamboyant CEO that seemed to, display his wealth. You see, like with Elon, he doesn't go around flashy.
No.
I mean, he's flashy with his mind.
Right.
But I don't think he's flashy with his stuff.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas we're talking about this Goshen guy, he was flashy.
Yeah.
I'm sure he always had his bodyguards and fancy dancy everything.
Yeah.
So, and it caught up to him, and now he's paying the price.
Yep.
He's lost his role as well as he's going to be losing a lot of his money. I was thinking, I don't know the details of it, but I think Japan put an indictment against him, didn't they?
Yep. So just the court costs alone are going to eat up any.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yep.
I'm sure. So paying the piper is always what's due when you do something wrong.
There it is.
That's
yes.
it.
And VW and Ford their talks are gaining steam.
Really?
So that should be interesting.
Yes, it is.
They're kind of co-venturing, and GM is in conversation with Tesla to assist with their EV cars.
Now, I thought we had some. Frank and I always have a little discussion before the show starts, just to get our ducks in a row. And you had said something that Elon Musk had said something about buying or taking over shuttered plants. Right.
During the interview with 60 Minutes, he suggested that he would be willing to have that conversation with GM. And if he can get the right price, he'd be willing to buy those plants.
And I'm sure he has plans already in the works. Something because, he has that big battery place out in Arizona. It's the world's largest
mega factory
that makes the batteries. And the big cost on these electric cars is the lithium batteries.
Right.
I think that's what puts the cost of the electric car a bit higher than for the average guy.
Right.
And I think if you can bring the costs down, the economies of scale, that would also create more demand.
Right.
Less profit, obviously, per battery pack, but it would create an open market for more people to maybe embrace the concept of an electric car.
Right.
Because the entry point or the price to enter is much more reasonable.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, the price of these electric cars is made sweeter by these federal tax breaks,
Right.
which I believe is $7,500.
And sunsetting at the end of this year.
That's right.
Mhm.
And I hope that they continue on with it because it really puts a fabulous product out into the hands of maybe someone who, I hate to say couldn't afford it, but I don't even think that's the right word. As we talked about on that Tesla show that we had about 2 months ago, the price of the average Model S is about $140,000.
Yeah.
I don't know if $140,000 is $7,500 tax break is
Right.
going to make or break the deal. It just makes it sweeter, I guess.
Right. And so the Model 3, which is supposed to be the everyman's car, the price.
But that
point-
that brings it down from 45 to
It ends up, well,
38 or something.
Yeah, and actually, if you get some of the features that you want to
it's
get
50,
on,
55.
yeah, 50 and 60.
It's
yeah,
still,
Yeah.
in my opinion, it's still too high.
exactly.
Still too high for the average
And
guy.
during that interview, he suggested that because he was held to account for that, because he said that Model 3 would be a $35,000 car.
And I'll be honest with you, it's not. In
And-
fact, the cheaper one, I don't even know if the cheapest of the Model 3s is available yet. Of course, they came up with the more expensive one,
Right.
which is the range, the
Yeah.
kilowatt hours.
Right.
Is how they
Yeah.
label batteries as kilowatt hours, how
Correct.
much juice comes out of them on an hourly basis.
Right.
It's just a gauge that the industry uses to measure the capacity.
All right. So this is December. He said 5 to 6 months from now, he's going to be able to offer that $35,000 car, and he's going to try to make good on that. And so, come June, we'll have that conversation again, and we'll see
Yes, we will.
if he made that benchmark.
And I'm gonna ask you one more question, Frank, because I
All
think
right.
you told me something more interesting than any of this is about the General Motors with
Dropping-
the Volt.
they
Tell me
dropped the
about the Volt and the history of it and where that funding came from.
Well, during the downturn of the economy, of course, government stepped in, as you well know, and helped to bail them out. And part of the bailout is the government bought up a lot of the Chevy Volts, which allowed, because those cars were sitting idle and were
Of
not,
course they were, and
they were
again,
not being sold.
though, they were pricey,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
They were probably $15,000 to $20,000 above that type of car size and capacity and what usage it would be if it was a gasoline powered car.
Correct. So the government bought up a bunch of those Chevy Volts and then repurposed them for government use with the post office and other agencies that they felt that could benefit.
So
from
almost
the-
like a double bailout. Not only did they pay for the funding of the car, they bought the darn things
Right.
at the selling price of, and I'm sure full list. I just a guess, but
Well, yeah, I mean, but they had to. Those cars were sitting idle. They had to get them moving. So,
yes,
So very good.
yeah. Again, Volto. I've worked on a Volto. I've had to.
Did you really?
I was. Our company, Crown Car Care, for several years has been on the preferred list of installations for these wireless charging stations that people buy for the Volt. And there's a company that makes this product, and I've installed quite a few of these wireless charging. The Volt is actually a fine car.
Mhm.
I've taken them apart nut and bolt just about the whole car myself in some of my training
Wow.
classes I went to up in Massachusetts.
Okay.
So the battery on the Volt is very interesting. It's liquid cooled.
Okay.
Liquid coolant runs through capillary tubes to cool the battery. And the battery is shaped like a T, and it runs just like a cross, if you imagine overlaying a cross on a car on the underbelly.
So these are lithium batteries too?
Lithium batteries,
Okay.
but liquid cooled, which is rare.
Yeah.
Then,
And it adds more weight.
of course it does. And a lot of lithium, and I'll give you an example, the one that Nissan makes, that
The Leaf.
the Leaf
Mhm.
is lithium,
Okay.
but those are flexible cells.
Yeah.
They're I've taken them apart, and they actually burn too. The lithium is highly flammable, and
Oh,
I've
yeah.
been witness to it. We did it as an experiment. We took
Mhm.
some of these lithium cells apart, and they actually, if you put fire or spark to it, they burn quite fast.
Ooh, baby.
Almost like magnesium on
Yes.
the old mag wheels.
Yes.
And that was a little snippet there. Mag wheels, if everyone remembers mag wheels from the 60s and 70s. We had a set of
Yeah.
mags. You know what the mag was short for?
Magnesium.
And they used it in racing because it was light
And
and
strong.
strong, just like
Yes.
titanium is. That we use titanium now.
Right.
But mag is still used.
Absolutely.
Magnesium is still used.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the side effect is it burns a white hot flame.
It does.
I mean, you can weld with it. I mean, it just when it goes, it goes. There's
right.
no
Once you get it started,
you're not putting it out. It's burning through
That's
everything.
it.
So very interesting.
Yeah.
So let me.
That's it for.
That's all for the automotive news. I think we had quite a bit there today. If you want more, contact us. We'd be glad to talk to you about anything you want automotive related at Crown Car Care. Crown Car Care is a 2 family-run stores that we have here in Martin County. And like I said, I wanted to talk a little bit about what Crown Car Care is and what we can do for you. We are those type of businesses. There's 2 of them, but owned by the same people, the Harris family. We are like you would want it maybe 15, 20, 25 years ago, and how you'd want that type of business, or the type of business you'd want to deal with. We're real easy. It's doing business with us. And the way we conduct our business, the way we fix our cars, the way we change the oil is convenient and easy. We don't have loopholes. We don't have exclusions. We don't have crazy procedures that tie you up. If you call on the phone and you want to bring your car in for an oil change, we'll get you scheduled right in. If you want it that day, we'll make room for you. That's just the way we run at Crown Car Care. It's kind of how you want it. Maybe how your grandparents would want it. And we run truth and honesty. We really believe in what we do, and we believe in what we sell, and we sell service. That's what we do at Crown Car Care. Every day, we open at 7 o'clock in the morning, and we're there till 5 o'clock at night. And there's guys that are working, and they work with passion. They work with the diligence and the wherewithal to produce a product that not only are they proud of, but you're proud of too once you are the purchaser of it. You come in for an oil change, and you get more than just an oil change. You're getting a car that's going to be looked at from bumper to bumper. We're going to check your spare tire. We're going to look at your wiper blades. We're going to fill up your washer bottle. And you don't even have to ask us. We just do it. We're going to put the right amount of oil in your car. We're going to put the right kind of oil. And if you've been listening to our show over the course of the last 6-7 months, you know that oil is critical. The type of oil is critical. There's so many different oils out there. And if you see these ads out there for these come-on prices of $19.95 for an oil change or anything like that, you know there's something very wrong with that, because some cars take oil that costs $60, $70 for 5 quarts of oil.
Yeah.
It depends on the car that you have. And we're going to be honest with you. We're going to tell you what kind of oil it takes. We're going to look at everything. We're going to check everything. Imagine you coming in for an oil change at one of these quickie type oil places, and you're low on engine coolant, and they really don't check it. All they do is look at the bottle. A lot of times your bottle can be filled up, but your radiator can be low.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's deceptive.
Yes.
We're going to check that. And imagine if you get a flat tire a week after you had an oil change. And that man comes out, or you have one of your family members come out on the side of the road, and it's dangerous on that side of the road, and you get ready to pull your spare tire out. I don't care if it's a full size or even one of them smaller donuts that we've talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And that sucker's out of air.
Yep.
How do you feel? At that moment, you're going to feel bummed out. But then the rage is going to start, and you're going to realize that, wait a minute, I was just in so-and-so's shop or so-and-so's business, and they changed my oil, and they looked my car over. And they didn't check that spare tire. Well, we're going to do it for you.
Right.
And if you're missing a tire, we're going to tell you. We really are. If you need to just have your radio set or your clock set on a radio, I know it's challenging. It can be difficult to set the clock on your radio. We could have a whole show about that.
Oh, yeah.
And every manufacturer, Frank, is different.
Oh, yeah.
And you know it. It's like having to click your heels 3 times and there's no place like home.
Yeah.
It's just like in Wizard of Oz.
There's no standardization
There's
at all.
nothing, Frank, in
Right.
standardization and
Right.
all this stuff. And I'm going to tell you, sometimes we're challenged. But I can tell you, Crown Car Care, if we get challenged, we're going to get the right information. And that's one of the reasons, if you stop in one of my businesses and shops, you'll find that you might see an old Rolls Royce there, or some old. The other week we had a 1960 Alfa Romeo in there that I was redoing the oiling system on, because someone up north had recently rebuilt the motor, and they made some mistakes and put the wrong bearings in it and had no oil pressure. And guess who found it? Me.
Nice.
Yeah, we did, but
Yeah.
we didn't have any manuals on it. We had to get the information. And that's one of the things that we're real good at. We're good at sleuthing. We're good at finding out the proper information for your vehicle and giving you the right answers.
Right.
And because that's critical, the right answers. It's not necessarily how fast you get the answers.
Yeah.
It's the right answer. Yes, we're fast. Yes, we can be speedy. Yes, we can do an oil change in record-breaking time if we have to. But I would rather get the right information and get it on so you can get a proper repair or a proper service at Crown Car Care at one of our 2 locations. Over there on Cove Road, ask for Mike, or over in Palm City, ask for Chris. And the number again is 772-781-8000. Why don't we take a break, Frankie, and then we'll come back and we'll do the hot oil engines and the diesel engines and the history of it. What do you think of
Okay,
that?
Very good.
Let's do it.
All right. So stick with us. We'll be right back. All right. Now it's time for today's Southeast AgNet Report, which is brought to you by Everglades Farm Equipment, a family-owned business for the past 50 years with 10 Florida locations, including Fort Pierce, Okeechobee, and Loxahatchee. Stay tuned. Todd and I will be right back. All right, a little Christmas music.
Oh, I love it.
Get you in the Christmas mood. There you go. And now back to Todd Harris.
And now it's time for part 3
Yeah, already.
of our show. And remember, next week we're going to have a special. Dr. Detroit will be in the studio, and he's quite a character, and he's an expert on automotive. And well, we're going to see if we can test his wit and will on the mechanics of a flying sled.
Nice.
Well, I can tell you, I've heard rumors that a big part of that flying sled has something to do with Christmas spirit.
Ah, Ah,
I think it has. I
yes.
think it does. So
I think so.
I think we'll be touching on that.
Cool.
So let's go into the early history of the diesel engine. I'm sure many of our listeners out there have diesel trucks, whether it be a Super Duty made by Ford, whether it be a Ram truck made by Dodge, or whether it be a Duramax made by General Motors. Those early engines weren't in cars at all. In fact, the origin of the diesel engine goes way back into the 1890s. Started by two people in different parts of the world. One was in Germany,
All right.
made by a German man who did his research in France. His name was Rudolf Diesel. And that's where the diesel comes from.
A lot of thought went into that name. Yeah.
Yep. And then there was another gentleman by the name of Herbert Ackroyd Stort. And he actually beat diesel to the game. And it's a little known fact. His style of motor was a little bit different. It was called a hot bulb low compression type diesel, but it still was a diesel. It burned diesel fuel or fuel oil, and it worked in a similar way. It wasn't injected into the cylinder. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. It was more of a secondary combustion bulb. They call it a hot bulb that was outside of the combustion chamber and outside the engine that preheated the diesel fuel so it would self-ignite once it went into that combustion chamber.
Nice.
And it was lower compression. Now, I believe in the past we've talked about the difference between a gasoline and a diesel engine.
Mhm.
The difference is the compression ratio, or how much it compresses the air, the squeeze. When you squeeze air or any type of substance under high compression, it generates heat. And that is the fundamental operational mojo of a diesel.
Got it.
The mojo is
You don't have to. No heat necessary to add.
no, it's
Yes.
it's created from friction, and I can tell you, just rubbing your hands together when you're cold, what happens?
Yeah.
You generate heat.
Yeah.
Same kind of principle. It's taking latent energy and making it kinetic is really what's happening. So Rudolf Diesel in 1893, and then there was Herbert Ackroyd Stort in 1891. And I don't know if anyone can have memories of this. Maybe you've been to some fairs. Palm Beach County Fair, many times in their yesteryear village, has these strange looking machines that have gigantic heavy flywheels on them that are spinning around. And it's usually, it almost looks like the front of a locomotive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big tank or a
Mhm.
big piece of cast iron, and this wheel is going around, and it usually sounds something like this. And what's happening is that gigantic wheel is spinning at such a speed, usually not real fast, but it's the inertia, Frank, of the mass of that gigantic wheel that keeps it in a constant, steady speed state.
So it must be like cast iron.
Yeah, well, it's
Yeah,
big and it's
yeah,
heavy.
yeah.
It's a monster. These
Right.
things weigh tons and tons of. When you move one of these gigantic power plants, it's pretty much there to stay.
Right.
And I was reading in a diesel magazine called Diesel Power or Diesel World, which is one of the guru Bibles of the diesel world. Anyone that's into these performance pickup trucks or diesels in general, you have different magazine publications out there that come out on a monthly basis or bi-monthly basis that provide information for us gearheads into the diesels.
To give you some historical context.
And a lot of times, in fact, they do every month, they have these older stories on early engines. And these early engines were used to power grain mills, sawmills. They were, and usually a gigantic belt was attached to the flywheel, and it provided circular motion. And that circular motion could be in a factory. If you've seen any old photos of factories or even old movies, you can remember looking up at almost like if anyone's ever seen the old fans in the old days that had a belt attached to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those would create the movement. And these machines would create the movement that would allow different things to be done, work to be done. And one of the big things that these pieces of equipment did was it generated electricity for a lot of these large manufacturing plants that had big electric motors. And remember, back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, we didn't have the power grid that we have today.
Right.
So these plants that and factories and manufacturing facilities that needed high voltage electricity to run some of these electric motors that were used in the production process had to have these diesel or low compression, single cylinder, flywheel driven, huge pieces of equipment to generate and turn the dynamos or the generators to create the electricity, so these plants would have the high voltage juice to use the electric motors to create what they were doing. Remember, these power plants I'm talking about were not a means to an end. They were a means to another means to an end. Right? It was used in the production of something. They were also used in the canals. The smaller versions were used on some of the canal ships, the boats that ran up and down the Mississippi would use these things because they were very efficient. They could run for days and months without shutting down. Wow. Now think about that. And it was a heck of a process to get going. In fact, I'm going to play this and everyone can listen. This goes back to the good old days of radio. Here is a person starting up a old-fashioned engine. You can hear this. He's lubricating all the joints of the external connecting rod and all the pieces of equipment. Now he's lit in a blowtorch. And he's heating up that secondary combustion chamber so they get the hot oil hot. Hopefully everyone can hear that out there. It's quite a process to get these things going. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get it so you can hear it running.
Sounds a little bit like Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
I was hoping you'd say that because that is where the name Chitty Chitty Bang Bang came from.
Wow.
Now, the Chitty Chitty Bang Bang was a steam-driven car. And if you've ever watched Jay Leno or Jay Leno's Garage, Jay Leno was a big collector of steam-powered cars like the Stanley Steamer.
Okay.
So I believe the original, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang wasn't, obviously it wasn't, well, it could have been a steam car in there, but it was a magical car.
Right.
But I think in intent.
In concept.
Concept and intent, it was supposed to be a steam car. And that's how the name came. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Just like that video I was playing a video, but I was hoping everyone could hear the noises.
Yeah.
Sometimes the noises in our world are just so magical.
Yeah.
And just listening to stuff is
all the things going on to create those noises.
Yes. And that sound effects that we were just playing, what was going on there was a man lubricating all the external joints that created motion once this engine was running. And he was heating up the thing called the hot bulb. But the hot bulb is the pre-combustion chamber that would preheat the fuel oil, so when it was put into the combustion chamber, it would self-ignite because remember, it was low compression. Yeah. And then we started by saying this, the diesels ran off high compression. Well, Rudolf Diesel in 1893, he came up with this fuel injection system that would allow the diesel fuel to be injected into a higher compression motor. So the real game changer in diesels came from Rudolf Diesel. Rudolf Diesel is he really is the game changer. But prior, and even during that period, up until the 1940s, these low compression, hot oil burner type energy devices, and they're really just creating motion. Repetitive motion is all it's doing. If you think about it, we're just creating movement, circular movement or rotational movement around an axis that has a flywheel effect that creates power. And that power, whether it's moving a steamship, whether it's or a boat up and down the Mississippi River, whether it's operating a grain elevator in the great state of Ohio or Indiana. In the original article that I was reading, this machine was called a Buckeye. Anyone know what a Buckeye is? Frank, you know?
So useless nut.
It's a useless nut that if you eat it, it can be fatal.
Yeah.
if you don't crack your teeth trying to open it.
Right.
But Ohio was called the Buckeye State.
It still is.
It still is. And what's the Indiana called?
The Hoosier State.
That's right.
Yeah.
The Hoosier State. And we and the history of Hoosier is shady in at best.
It is.
There's really not a lot of good
That's
history of Hoosier.
connotations for that. Okay.
Right.
All right.
Hoosier. And a great movie. If everyone's ever seen the movie Hoosiers with Gene Hackman, it's a great basketball
Yes.
story about the relationships of people.
Right.
And all I can tell you is it's a feel-good movie. At the end, you feel real good. You may even have a tear or two that it comes out of your eyes because it's that good of a movie. And that took place in Indiana. Indiana is known for its basketball.
Yeah,
And this is what this whole thing was about. So my interest in these early diesels came from, like I say, a Diesel World magazine that had one that was called a Buckeye. And that was originally in a grain elevator. And these gentlemen in 1978 rescued it before destruction of this grain elevator that when the place went out of business, it caught fire. They took it out of the basement of this place and refurbed it, and now it is still in existence today for people to see how these things work.
It lives on.
Let me tell you, the history of our industrial civilization is so fascinating. If people would just take a pause in life and go back and look at it, you'd find out the history repeats itself, and there's the ingenuity and the genius behind the people that create it. It's just fabulous stuff.
And you think about the tooling that they needed to make the rudimentary tools for then.
Oh my
It was
gosh.
phenomenal.
Just think about
and to create balance.
Yes.
And how did they do that? I mean, that's the big question.
We were able to do it. I mean, it's just on a large scale. You have to, for example, this motor that I'm talking about here, this Buckeye motor that's in this magazine article is monstrous. It's like 17 or 20 feet long. It had a 19-inch bore. The piston bore was 19 inches. To put it in relative terms, a piston in today's modern motors is about 1.5 inches to 2 inches across, 3 inches maybe.
Yeah.
This is 19 inches. How did they do it? Well, they had a lot of time. Time was slower back then, and people had more time to do things, and we made it in giant forgeries. You know how iron is made in these big plants. A lot of them have closed down now. A lot of the steel mills and
right.
in this country, if you ever see old videos or old movies of it, it's just fascinating of itself. And the ingenuity and just the manpower that it took to machine these things. If you think about it, even the machinery that we're talking about had to be made.
Yes.
Right. You had to, I think that's what you're getting at, Frank. How the
Yes.
heck did we make it?
Yes.
Let alone using this to make other things.
Right. First, they had to conceptualize it.
Yes.
Then they had to develop the machines to make the machines.
Right. And remember, we
Right.
did everything manually.
Yeah.
There was no computers to generate equations and data that would show the breaking point or the stress of the connecting rod or the metal. How thick do you have to make the walls?
Yeah.
Everything was overbuilt. That's one thing I can tell you. Everything was overbuilt in the
Yeah,
old
because
days.
they didn't know. They didn't want it to break. Number one.
So that if they knew, I think it, from a calculation standpoint, it's much easier to overbuild something than it is to underbuild it and put it right at the limits.
Right.
We weren't trying to make everything lighter. See, in today's world, we're trying to make everything lighter.
Yes.
So then we have to know the known points of stress and breakage, because to do lighter, we have to push the envelope.
Right.
Mm-hmm. One example I can think of this whole concept is there's a famous bridge that I believe it was in Wisconsin or up in Michigan, that they caught it on old
The Mackinac Bridge.
the one that collapsed. There was one that collapsed. The winds hit it because it was underbuilt. And we have a video. I say video. We had film of it then. Of this bridge, and it was underbuilt. They just didn't build it stout enough.
Right.
And that was that
Twisting
one
and
bridge,
turning.
the one bridge that fell because of this is what caused a lot of the new standards to be put into place on bridges. Bridges are overbuilt like 4 times over.
Yeah, and rightfully so.
They should be.
Yeah.
Just like on an airplane has a backup on a backup, a lot of them, right? A lot of people didn't know that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of redundancy. Same with spaceships. We have redundancy on redundancy. Now, in industry and stuff that's here settled on Earth in the confines of gravity, a lot of times we don't put redundancy in place. We just we hope there's reliability.
Right.
The word reliability comes into play, and that's how cars get bad names, right? Think about
right.
it. How does a car get a bad name? Usually reliability.
It's not reliable.
Right.
That's right.
And that's going to lead us into the next topic, which is the check engine light.
Okay. Very nice. And we'll be right back. So stick with us and check your engine light when we return.
Thank you for driving me to work.
You know this is my day off, Sheldon.
Oh, good. I'm not keeping you from anything. Your check engine light is on.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, that's an indicator to, check your engine.
It's fine. It's been on for like a month.
Well, actually, that would be all the more reason to, check your engine.
Sheldon, it's fine.
If it were fine, the light wouldn't be on. That's why the manufacturer installed that light, to let you know it's not fine.
Maybe the light's broken.
Is there a check engine light?
And that is from a great show called
The Big Bang Theory.
The Big Bang Theory.
Yes, indeed.
And that is a little play on the check engine light, which has its origins back to the early 80s with General Motors. The CCC system, the computer command control system, which was one of GM's first computerized, fuel-injected, and carbureted systems. They used and incorporated a check engine light or an engine light, an amber light.
Yes.
And that was a light that comes on that would indicate to the driver that there was a pending doom.
Something was
ahead.
amiss. Maybe
Something
oil
was
pressure or
amiss.
something.
Yes. And it has progressed into what we call the check engine light.
Yeah.
And it is standard across all platforms, by the way. And we can thank the OBD2 onboard diagnostic second generation, and started in 1996, mandated by the federal government that all cars have a check engine light. And that can be tested from a port, the engine port, which by federal law has to be within 1 foot of the center line of the car at the dashboard. I don't know if
Right.
anyone knew that. 1 foot,
No,
as
I didn't.
12 inches.
Wow.
So it has to be within 12 inches of the center line of the car,
All right.
either right or left. Sometimes they're over on the passenger side. Sometimes this little secret place that you plug the scan tool into or the tester is hidden behind an ashtray lid or a cover or behind the fuse panel, but it's always within 1 foot of the center line of the car by federal law.
How amazing is that?
Yeah. And I'm sure, and if you haven't, I'm going to tell you what it is. Check engine light is nothing more than a light that comes on that tells you if there's a problem or there has been a problem in your engine management system. And the engine management system is the system that controls how your engine runs, whether it be the fuel injection. We've talked about that. Whether it be the ignition system, we've talked about that under tune-ups. Remember, 2 weeks ago we had a show on tune-ups. We talked about that. Whether it be the throttle body, the engine coolant sensor, there is about, I think I last count, there was 4,000 generic codes, 4,000 codes for different ways that the light can come on.
4,000 different ways.
Now I'm going to tell you something even broader than that.
Good God.
The minimum standards are set forth by the federal government for why the light can come on, and the codes are all the same, by the way.
Uh-huh.
So if your code for, let's say you have a misfire on cylinder number 4, it's not running right. That would be a P0304. So P stands for powertrain. 03 is a misfire, and then 04 would be the number 4 cylinder. So P0304 would be the same for whether you have a Volkswagen Touareg or whether you have a Chevy Impala. P0304 is going to be the same code. But here's the but.
Uh-oh.
The manufacturers, they have to meet the minimum standard for the federal laws that require you to have these codes. There can be thousands, and there are thousands of different codes that give you more detailed information about that particular motor. And that information does not have to be shared through these OBD2 laws in the federal government that says mandates that those codes need to be the same.
So those are the ones we refer to as proprietary.
Yes.
Yes.
And those proprietary codes do not have to be shown through, and you've all heard this many times. You've heard on advertisements, you bring your car in for a free scan and we'll tell you what the check engine light is.
Right.
Okay. Those tools that people use for scanning those particular codes, there could be 10 other codes hidden behind the one code that you have that is not going to show up on those scan tools. And it does not have to by law. So what am I saying here? Many times, about half the time, It can be something simple. And it doesn't always have to be a part. People get this idea that,
Right.
that just because so-and-so's part store says they'll scan it for free is going to mean that there's a part that you need to put on. Many times it's not a part.
Yeah.
It could be a vacuum leak. It could be a gasket. It could be a wire. It could be a networking problem. Today's cars, that check engine light could come on if you have a problem with the braking system. Because now we have systems that control the throttle for, say, if one of the wheels was spinning, you have a system that will come into play that will control the output of the engine so you don't overpower. So you don't get into an uncontrolled skid due to power loss,
Right.
due to traction loss. That makes sense? So
Yeah.
you can have it. The climate control system can be related to the check engine light. Like I said, the braking system can be, the steering system can be. So in the days of 1996, for the most part, it was just the engine.
Yeah.
Today, though, it's broad and wide in terms of the subsystems on a car that the check engine light pertains to. And the check engine light can also flash.
Wow.
Not only can it come on, but if it flashes, what do you think you need to do?
Stop right away.
Stop right away.
Yeah.
There is, and as you heard on this little gimmicky thing that we played from
From TV.
from
yes.
TV here, you, for the most part, if it's not a critical item, you can drive it until you get into whoever you go to.
Right.
I hope and pray it's Crown Car Care, but you might not be. There's other fine automobile shops out there that do just a fine job too. And you need to get it into them to get it checked out.
Right.
And it's not just so simply as plugging in a piece of equipment to tell you what the code is. That's a starting point. Now, sometimes you get lucky. You could have a code P0455, Frank. The P0455 generally means the gas cap was left off.
Ah.
Okay.
So the vacuum pressure changed.
In the fuel tank.
Right.
Okay. That's as simple as you just spinning your cap back on.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think happens if you spin your cap back on, you caught it, and the light's still on? Do you think it goes off eventually? It does. It really does. The light will go off after 3 complete drive cycles of your car. So a lot of times if you know the flaw that happened with your car, sometimes you self-correct it, the light will eventually go out. It's not going to go out right away, but it will go out. But here's another caveat. If you're driving along and the engine light starts flashing and then it stops flashing and the light stays on, it doesn't mean you're good to go. That means you need to go get it checked out. And here I'm going to tell you why. Anytime that you have a flashing check engine light, that means you have a misfire. That means your engine is running real bad. And what do we have in the exhaust system, Frank, that helps clean up our environment? What are those things called?
Catalytic converters.
And what happens if we put too much fuel into the catalytic converter?
They get a little hot.
They get real hot and burn up.
Yeah.
And do you know what those cost? Thousands.
Yeah.
Thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all that can be prevented by, if you see a flashing check engine light, or you have a check engine light, or you have a regular place that you go for business, for your repairs and your maintenance, have them check it out. Sometimes a simple repair can save you thousands if you catch it early enough. Like Crown Car Care would do for you. If your check engine light's on and you're in for an oil change, we're just going to scan it for you real quick. We'll probably scan it before you even know it. And we'll tell you what you got. Now, if it involves in complex diagnostics and I have to break out my slide rule and start using a supercomputer to figure the thing out, it may not happen during the course of your oil change. But at least I can give you the message and the sounding of the alarm that, hey, we need to take a look at that car. We need to take a look at the subsystem that's involved and see what you got.
Yeah.
Because we want to prevent further damage. That's our goal. The goal is to get your car running optimum. Because when your car runs optimum, what happens? You get good fuel mileage too. You're a happy camper.
Happy camper. Yeah.
Happy camper. And the check engine light, for me, when I drive my car, I don't like it when the lights are on. Like a tire light comes on or the check engine. I hate that. Don't you, Frank?
Oh, it's very disconcerting.
It is. It
Yeah.
makes you just like that show that we just caught the bit on. That man was very concerned about it. The girl wasn't,
No.
but he was very
It's
concerned
been on
about
for a month.
But we need to have a check engine light that checks the check engine light. Now, I will tell you this. A lot of times the check engine light can come on and there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
Right. And there we have software updates.
Yeah.
What's that? Well, that's a whole other show. That's called reprogramming of the computers.
Yeah.
And we can do that at Crown Car Care. I have all the specialty equipment for most of the manufacturers to be able to do that.
Nice.
Many times the fix is nothing more than a software update. Wouldn't that be nice to just have to pipe in new software just like on your home computer or your phone and it fixes it?
That is sweet.
Sometimes it is the issue here.
Right.
But you got
It's
to
like
get
rebooting the computer.
absolutely,
Yeah.
but you got to get to the right people that know the right answers.
Right.
As like with anything, everybody is going to give you 2 cents on what the problem could be or would be.
Right.
But at Crown Car Care, we do one thing. We give you the honest to goodness, the skinny. We give you the real deal on what you got with your car. Whether it's a simple oil change, whether you need to have your radio set, whether you need a set of rear wiper blades for your car, right? Or you need that tire lights coming on and you wonder why the pressure is all good, but you still got that tire pressure light that comes on the dash. We can help you.
Right.
How about if
Why
you're
are you still sneezing when you're driving down a country road? Because the cabin filter
there
needs-
is dirty, right, Frank?
Yeah.
Yes. And we check that for you.
Yeah.
Most of the people that come to me new as fresh customers that have never been into Crown Car Care don't even know that they have a cabin filter.
Yeah. I know.
And they're important.
Oof.
Oh, yes, they are. Or else you're going to get sneezeroo.
Right out.
Well, fabulous. Let's have a great show next week and everyone have a great week coming up.
All righty. Take care.
Bye-bye.